This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. If there was ever a time in America to appreciate what we have in common as opposed to what we don't, it's like right now. Would you say that's true? I mean, realizing how we're the same instead of how we're different no matter what kind of background we come from? Jessica Wisely gets to the heart of that concept in her book, All Those Pieces. She always wanted to write a book, and when she started working with the developmentally disabled adult population as a specialist in speech-language pathology, she knew she had a story to tell about the lives of the people she worked with and the impact they had on her life.
I go into lives of many of the different individuals. They come from a diverse background. Some with low socioeconomic status, some with the opposite, some lower functioning, some higher functioning, very verbal, people that you and I would consider, quote, normal, others that the world doesn't see as quite, quote, normal. And I go into their different stories and how I tried to relate to each one as I worked with them on communication skills. And I found that they taught me in the end as much as I taught them, possibly even more. And I found that I was able to relate to these individuals in a way that I never thought was possible. The job can be very, very frustrating because it's very slow progress, and sometimes you see no progress at all. However, it's not so much the target goal that matters. It's being able to relate to another person on another dimension, and I talk about meeting on the common walkway of our humanity and realizing that we as, quote, normal are not better. They're as good as we are, if not better. And I could embrace a person like this now as much as I could embrace the Queen of England, with as much or more enthusiasm. So I think that was the point of the whole book. We're all the same. At the end of the day, we're all the same.
Yeah, my head starts spinning when I hear you talking because I see they're really the lucky ones, because if people are looking down at them or making fun of them, they're not necessarily aware of it. And if they aren't aware of it, they're in a world that seems so much kinder than the world that we live in.
Yes. The first individual I talk about is named Charles, and he was in his early 20s when I first met him, from a low socioeconomic family, probably what would be considered in old-fashioned terms moderately mentally retarded, although we do not use the term retarded, we use the term intellectually impaired. Charles, I am not sure if he came from an abusive background or not. He very well may have. He was a classified sex offender himself, which is why he got into the special education system and ended up in our agency. And his speech was very poor, very rapid, he was very difficult to understand. And so I worked with him on that. I worked a lot with reading and writing. He had the literacy skills of about a 5-year-old. He is just someone I never thought I would, quote, like, or even have the possibility of even reaching or helping. And by the end of our 5 years, I found out that that wasn't true. We did Bible studies together. We had personal talks. We just sort of almost became friends. It's kind of hard to explain as a therapist and a, quote, patient or client, but we came to know each other very well, and I really came to respect him and like him. And I never thought that that's a person I could respect or like before I started this job.
Did he even realize the crime that he committed, the consequences of that?
He did realize that. He had said that he had, sexually assaulted another kid in the bathroom when he was younger, and that is why he had landed where he did. So he did have the comprehension. Not everybody does, but he did. And it's the ones in that gray area that I think he fell in. He would never be extremely handicapped, but he would never be, quote, normal either. He would never be able to drive a car, live in an apartment, or have a job, things you and I take for granted. He would never be able to have those things. He would never aspire to anything other than living in a group home. So I think that's where he was coming from, and that's who I felt the most sorry for, was for the ones in the gray area.
I think it's an interesting population, and I think it'd be a great movie.
You know, I am glad you said that, because my goal all along is to have this become a TV series. And I just completed the audiobook, which I narrated myself, which was probably the best part of this whole adventure, was narrating my own book, and that should be out anytime. And I do have my own website. You can go to allthosepieces.com.
Okay, and what's the significance of your title?
Well, All Those Pieces, and you find more out about it as you get to the end of the book, but all those pieces are really those tender moments when I connected to the individual psychologically or emotionally. And again, I found a way to relate to each and every one of them. We were common human beings. So it's those bits, it's those pieces, it's those tender moments when we met as equals. That's where the title comes from.
Ah, nice, Jessica. Thank you so much. When Bertha Allen got married more than 50 years ago, she found out she couldn't have children. So she and her husband opened a daycare center in Utah, where she was mom to so many kids. In her book, Naughty and Nice, Happy and Sad, she shares her stories, some of them gut-wrenching.
Well, it's about the kids and what the kids have said, and how some of them come from bad homes, and some has good homes. I have been there for 54 years, and about 30 years ago, this little boy came, and he had bruises all the time, and she'd tell me, oh, he fell off his horse. Oh, we were in an accident. This one time, she had a boyfriend, his mother, and this time he picked him up. She dropped him, and I said, why is he so bruised? What happened? Oh, we were in a wreck. So I called Protective Service to come and to take pictures and to see this little boy how bruised he was. And Protective Service didn't come. They must have told the mother, because when the mother picked him up, she said, you won't see him again. And they left. But before they left, that little boy just screamed, you wouldn't believe. But I never did see him. That was in November that I turned her in. And then in April, the DA came out, and he asked for me. And he said, can you remember what happened in November? He told me, Randy Patterson. He said, you know, Randy is dead. I said, who killed him? You know, I was just sweating, so was the little baby. He was 18 months old, and he held on to me. He pinched me. He just didn't want to go. We fought with him for 15 minutes, and finally she got him to go. And he was kicking on the way, holding his arms out for me to go get him. And I still had kids at the daycare. I could not leave. So as it was walking, I thought, boy, if I had a gun, I'd shoot both of them. That little boy fought for his life.
Oh, Bertha, I am so sorry. That must be so difficult to even recall. But you were able to help some of the kids, right?
Oh, another little boy came, and he was about 3. And I says, why don't you sit down and finish your coloring? He says, I can't. My bum hurts. So I said, let me see. And I guess there's round cigarette lighters. He had about 12 of them burned on his bum. And I called her. I said, what is this? And his name was Daddy. She started crying, and she says, oh, my boyfriend hurt him because he would behave. I said, you better come and get him. And he is going to get out of that house. And you kick him out. I wish someone bigger than me would go and murder his mom. How would he like it? But she left him and she moved in with her mother.
Well, you made a difference there, Bertha. You said there were some funny moments too, right?
Like this little girl, I asked her, oh, your mom's going to have a baby. And she said, yes. When is she going to have it? And she said, oh, in 20 years.
20.
And then another cute one is this little girl said, I'm going to marry Dawn. I said, oh, are you? Yeah. And then next day when she came in, she says, I'm going to marry Joe. And I said, I thought you was going to marry Donald. Some of the kids asked her, are you going to marry both of them at the same time? And she said, no, you silly. I only have one left.
Oh, jeez, that's cute. So I guess you have a message for parents, huh, Bertha?
Well, I guess I want them to pay attention more about the kids.
Yeah.
And they grow up so fast. You should spend more time with your kids.
And be nice to them. Thanks, Bertha. You never know where inspiration might come from. For Linda Hamilton, it was one of her son's homework assignments that became the brainchild for her fairy tale entitled Kate, the Magical Cow.
Well, I was inspired by my son who was writing a fairy tale in school, and the teacher sent out some guidelines. They were called fairy tale tricks. I was kind of helping him with that. And one example was you don't say if someone was sad or they got sad. You would say they got sadder and sadder and sadder. And that is imagery for little kids. So in doing that, it kind of made me want to write. And I kind of took that first little section, and that's how this book came about. Just made it up. It's about a magic cow. She's from another planet. Makara, this cow was banished to Earth because she made someone mad and was found by this young boy's father. And so they just became really good friends. So he would go and talk to the cow. He didn't know the cow could talk as well. So one day the cow just talked back to him and kind of explained how she was very sad because she was making this magic milk and everybody loved her milk. And then she was getting older and she couldn't do it anymore. So the boy's father then wanted to sell her. And he was very upset about that. And she remembered that when she came to Earth, there was this coin, this magic coin. So they found it and they summoned up a fairy princess who told her to do certain things. And once she did that, she got her magic milk back. So that's basically what the first story was about. So I decided to kind of make it a book. So after they were going to live happily ever after, and then maybe they didn't live happily ever after. So what happened after that is that she wanted to go back to her other planet to get her family and bring them back because now they were rich and they had all this money and the milk was so great. And she didn't know how to do that. And then decided to call upon the fairy princess again. But when they rubbed the little coin, the fairy princess didn't come back. It was like this other little kooky lady. And I say kooky because she laughed really funny and she said funny things that sometimes wasn't right. And they were kind of skeptical about using her or trying to work with her. But she basically told them that she could take them back to the other planet. And they end up going back and they meet a lot of funny people who was trying to stop them from finding the daughter and the husband because they were also using the daughter for her milk. So they go to this factory, and there's some really kooky people in there too, and they end up finding them and trying to run and come back to Earth because they went on a time machine. They had a little bit of time to get back to Earth on time before they may not ever be able to come back. Interesting part is it's the first book, and there's going to be another book.
Oh my goodness, you're on a roll here.
I know, it's like you get started and you just go. I'm doing some promotional ads with Google, and I have a website. It's called KateTheMagicalMilkCow.com.
Okay.
And so you can get books there, and it also refers to you to where they're being sold at bookstores or whatever.
All right, Linda Hamilton, you got to love that name, right? Think about it. We'll be back right after this. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Writer by day, full-time school custodian by night, Fentress Homer was talking politics back in 2016 when he realized a connection to the Bible that led him to write the biblical history of the liberal and of conservatism.
You get a biblical base for liberalism and conservatism, and then you can see how it's kind of spread out as various folks get different ideas, and it kind of blends out at times. Generally, conservatives would follow the Bible, and things like abortion, school choice, for example, would lean towards, conservatives, Bible-following conservatives wouldn't want to murder a baby. And yet there's some conservatives that are deciding to go with the flow and push it. Various conservatives are starting to go with different flows, like politicians, for example, and then I think I can go with this idea, primarily because it'll get votes, and maybe also money, and maybe layoffs from the press on being hard on them. Just as an example, but that's a kind of a big one right there. But at least for the conservatives, know where your base is, and basically that would be the Bible. I invite everybody to read it and at least draw your own conclusions, see where you stand. If you're comfortable with it, then fine. If not, at least for those probably on the conservative side, at least we could say, I'd rather go back with God and follow His ways. From Genesis to Revelation, we want to keep all the Ten Commandments. Nobody's going to ever keep them perfectly because we're all sinners, but nonetheless, that's our goal to strive for, is the Ten Commandments. The Jews have about 600 more laws to keep, but we were made by God, and we want to follow God because God put that in us. But because of the sin nature, we don't tend to always follow God. But God has given us a kind of an end result of where we go after we die, and you want to follow God and the way He is described in the Bible. And while that's not salvific in itself, living here on earth does kind of pave the way on how you'll live in heaven, as far as, first and foremost, did you choose to go with God and His way or not? And generally your thinking will kind of take you one or two directions. I have given 2 or 3 copies out there. I gave one to a pastor and one to a friend who's also a writer, but he's not yet published, and I just gave it to him for encouragement. And we're kind of like-minded. I think he enjoyed it. I've had several copies I've passed out to friends. I've had good reviews from some friends. I've got a few that are liberal. They didn't like it, and so, well, maybe that's not a total loss there. At least it stung them, so to speak. This is not my general genre, because this one kind of mixed politics. That's not my maybe favorite, but in 2016 and even with it going into 2020, things have gotten kind of wishy-washy, especially on the conservative side. Like some of the conservatives are going for the vote rather than for the proper standards that a conservative would normally take.
Well, it's an interesting perspective, Fentress. Thank you. 23 years ago, Rich Siebert says he opened his life to Christ and found a calling to write Memories from a Real World, The Road to the Rapture.
It's about 7 people, and they're chosen by God to be prepared for the work they're going to do just before the rapture. And it also shows you what the devil is doing on his side and what God is preparing before he takes his own home. There'll be certain things that are happening. This is not a, let's say, dated type thing that the Lord is coming back in 2021. This takes place in 1994.
Why is that?
Okay, well, the first place is this. You get all the things out there. Everybody's predicting Jesus Christ coming back at a certain time. And it says in the Word that no man shall know the time or the day when the Lord shall appear except for God the Father. So what this is mainly salvation, showing that you have to be ready to be prepared and live for Christ as things are going on and not be caught up in the world's events. Even though it takes place in the past, because it's a parallel universe with alternate history, this is, let's say, something that people should really read, the Christian as well as non-Christian.
Why? Give me an example of what you're talking about.
Okay, well, the Christian, this is an assurance that you're saved and you're destined for eternal glory with Jesus Christ when the rapture happens. Now, the rapture is a theory. It's not a fact. And when the person reads this book, he or she will see a lot of similarities to what is going on now with what is happening. The book deals with the Christian and the non-Christian. The main theme of the book is this. If you were to die tonight, where are you going to spend eternity, or are you going to heaven?
Who do you talk to about these ideas?
Okay, I talk to the average person who I meet in the store or with various people I meet on Facebook. In fact, I'm going to be contacting pastors soon. And my pastor, he preaches the end times, this is eschatology, which is the end time events. But like I said before, it's fictional. There's something in it for everybody, from science fiction down to eschatology. The 7 people in the story, from ethnic, economic, racial backgrounds. So you got a multi-class of people in there. And not to give anything away, the tagline in the story is these people were all born in the hospital the same day, same hour. And they were seen by a missionary woman who will be eventually guiding them in certain things, revealing them through the scripture. The King James Bible is prevalent throughout the book. It's a what if. What if the rapture is true? What if all this things that are going to happen with us comes about?
All right, Rich, thank you. Now that she's retired, Teddy Blakely finally has the time to write that thriller and love story she's always wanted to put down on paper. It's entitled Charles Collins' Inhibitions.
Well, I've always had a lot of stories in me, but this one in particular was about some friends that had told me some stories, and so I wrote about it. My friends live an alternative lifestyle. They're gay, and the straight guy fell in love with an openly gay guy at a bar, and they decided to be together, but they never consummated the relationship because of it's supposed to be man and woman, and it's about these 2 people in the elevator, and they're kind of like hugged up, and the way it reads, you would think that it's a man and a woman, but then when they get ready to go to bed, they realize that it's 2 men. So they never consummated the relationship, and they lived together for a year at this point in the story. And what happened was Charles went to a gay bar with his friend, and there was a singer there, and the singer was the person that he had fallen in love with the voice on the radio. And so he used to fantasize about the voice. And then when he went to this bar and this singer was there, it was this guy that sang the song that he was in love with. And they fell in love instantly with each other. They decided to be together, and Charles finally admitted to him that he wasn't gay because he wouldn't consummate the relationship with him. So Richard and Charles, they get into a fight because they were at a bar together with some friends, and a girl that was in love with Charles kept trying to create problems between him and Richard because she said, Charles isn't gay, and I know he isn't. This is just some passing fancy. So she would always come up wherever he was at and create problems. And Richard decided that he wasn't going to take it any longer. So when they got home, he decided to intrigue Charles. And Charles got mad. He was partly drunk anyways, but he got mad and pushed him down. So Richard left and went to this guy that was a producer and a promoter. And this guy was always in love with Richard, but Richard didn't know that. And he was obsessed with Richard. He made him into a sex trafficking. He made him into a slave and sold him to people. And Charles eventually felt that Richard had just left him because he had pushed him or hit him. And he was just really upset about this. But as time went on, he found out that Richard had been abducted, and he was looking for him. And so one night when he was at the bar having dinner with some friends, the same bar that the girl used to always create problems between them, and he was actually with that girl. And Richard came in because the guy that had abducted him had to take care of some business in California, so he took him with him and told him to sit right there. And when he seen Charles there, he walked over to him. And Charles asked him, well, how is Gaston treating you? And he told him, he beats me and he rapes me every night. And Charles got really angry with him. And while they were talking, Richard looked up and seen Gaston coming through the door. And he knew he was supposed to be sitting at a certain table because he was very frightened of him. And Gaston walked past and he said, didn't I tell you to sit here? And Charles stood up and grabbed Gaston and turned and spun him around and punched him in the face and knocked him to the floor. And Gaston shot him in the stomach. And before he closed his eyes, he kissed Richard, which they never kissed. And he opened his eyes and he said, wow. And he closed his eyes again. That was the end of the book.
Does he die?
Read the next book.
Okay, I will. What a way to end this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. If you missed anything, go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.